Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Metaphysical Curiosity by Russell Merrill. From Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 19, Number 5, June 1941. Metaphysical Curiosity by Russell Merrill. Theologians and philosophers have for centuries attempted to construct positive proofs for the existence of a supreme being, but only 4 or 5 such arguments have received wide acceptance, and there is hardly a layman who will not accept them as logical in reasoning and true in conclusion. Even a child will advance the existence of God by pointing to a tree and asking whom it was that created it. That would be the argument from causality, or cause and effect. For if there is a cause, there must be an effect, and vice versa. And the arguments from history and revelation, from teleology and from universal argument and order are equally cogent and comprehensive. The reason for this wide acceptance lies in one fact. These proofs appeal to man's experience and reason combined. Each of them is established on the basis of objective facts, with which is familiar through experience, for they point to the evidence and reason to the conclusion on the basis of the evidence. However, there is one argument which has neither wide acquaintance nor has it wide acceptance in the circles where it has been introduced. Some have regarded it as utterly absurd, and others have rejected it, merely because it is unintelligible to them. It is centuries old, and it has been heatedly debated in scholastic spheres ever since Augustine introduced it. Yet, as an experiment in mental gymnastics, it has few equals, and as an example of what men have attempted to do to establish positive proof of a supreme being's existence, there is no argument to exceed its brilliance, subtlety of thought and approach, an amazing appeal to the mind alone. It is an excellent illustration of Aristotelian thinking, for it is wholly metaphysical in both attack and conclusion. The argument follows. 1. While it may appear arbitrary to begin with definitions, the definitions given are those necessary to an understanding of the argument, and they are implied not only in a scholastic philosophy, but in many philosophic works, whenever the terms are employed, being that which either exists or apt to exist. Existence, the actual presence of a thing in the physical order. 2. Since the argument is constructed to establish the existence of a supreme being, there is nothing more inevitable here than a clarification of what a supreme being is. A definition purports to distinguish a subject from every other subject, and it cannot be denied that the definition of a supreme being given in this argument does not fulfill that qualification. A supreme being is an uncreated and uncreatable subject. There is only one subject of which man would acknowledge such attributes, and that subject is God. If God were creatable, then the creature who was his creator would be more powerful than he, and he would not be God. If the supreme being was uncreated, he would not exist, the reader will reason. But if the supreme being were created, then, as were stated, he would not be God, and he would not be supreme. For that reason, God has been termed eternal and uncreated and uncreatable. 3. Form the idea of an uncreated and uncreatable being in your mind. It is most essential to the argument's clarity that this ideal be firmly established in the mind before proceeding to the next step. 4. By forming the idea of a being in your mind, you have in mind an object which either exists or is apt to exist, for that is what a being is. 5. With this idea of a being in mind, therefore, one note in your mind with respect of this being is the note of existence, or an idea of a being in your mind necessarily predicates the existence of an idea of that being in your mind. The moment the idea of a being enters your mind, you have conceived of a thing which either exists or is apt to exist. 6. But the being under discussion here is either creatable or not creatable. That which is apt to exist is creatable, but the being aforementioned is not creatable. Therefore, it is not apt to exist. 7. Yet it is a being. 8. Not being apt to exist, it must exist. Since the being must be either of these two classifications, and since it is not of the class apt to exist because it is not creatable, then it must belong to the class existence. 9. Ergo, an uncreated and uncreatable being exists. That being is God. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.